With Donald Trump talking about rethinking the NATO membership, the transatlantic tensions have reached another level. What does it mean for Europe and Ukraine? To talk about it, we're joined by Adam Jasser, news director here at TVP World. Good evening, Adam.
Good evening, Maciej.
So Donald Trump says the US should rethink its NATO membership. Is truly the unity of NATO in danger?
Well, it depends on how seriously we want to treat pronouncements from Donald Trump, because we know that they tend to change. However, it seems that his negative approach to NATO has been a consistent thread in many of his pronouncements. So, yes, in a sense, it's just another indication that he doesn't value NATO very much.
Mm-hmm. I see. Now, Finland's President Alexander Stubb, the person you've met, dubbed the Trump whisperer, suggested that Europe should rather look into supporting the US in Iran in order to secure the American help for Ukraine. Now, Adam, given Donald Trump's approach to the conflict in Ukraine, do you think that such an arrangement would be acceptable for the White House?
The European leaders, Europeans in general, have been trying for months now to convince Donald Trump that Ukraine needs more support, that Russia is not straightforward and doesn't really want peace. Unfortunately, in sentence after sentence, appearance after appearance, Trump seems to be blaming Ukraine more for the war and for the lack of agreement on a potential ceasefire or a peace agreement than Russia. Even during this latest Iran conflict, Ukraine is backing the United States. Russia is backing Iran, and still President Trump seems to be saying Vladimir Putin is someone he wants to deal with, rather than Zelensky, President Zelensky, who, for reasons that he sometimes finds difficult even to define, is opposing the peace. So the Europeans, President Stubb made this proposal sort of tongue-in-cheek during a meeting in a think tank. But there is something to it. Maybe if the Europeans manage to engineer such a trade-off, where America would be more favorable towards Ukraine, while the Europeans help out in the Strait of Hormuz, that could make sense. But it seems that there are not too many takers in Europe. It's notable that even the parties and groupings in Europe that are favorable towards Trump, the far-right movements, they're not rushing with their endorsement of his war in Iran.
I see. Now, Adam, yesterday I asked the very same question, and one of our guests, Ivana Stradna, said that Donald Trump is not helping Ukraine not to anger Vladimir Putin. But do you think that's what really counts in real politics? Not to anger the president of your enemy in the end?
I think we heard it from a number of guests recently that, for Ukraine, it's a very difficult balancing act. On the one hand, Ukraine realizes that Trump is not really interested in Ukraine's victory or in Ukraine's getting good terms in any peace deal with Russia. On the contrary, that Trump is primarily interested in finishing the war, and if it's on Russia's terms, then so be it. At the same time, Ukraine is still dependent on American support when it comes to some of the air defenses, intelligence sharing, and so on and so forth. So I think President Zelensky rightly quickly endorsed the Americans when it comes to Iran. He offered help, but again, in a strange twist of of reality, Mr. Trump seems to be offended by the Ukrainian offer of help and insists that actually he can talk to Russia about Iran. So, in some sense, we're living and we're witnessing some fake reality here, which is divorced from what is right and what is wrong. And I think this is the main reason why the Europeans are also very hesitant to make any pronouncements and to get involved into this fake reality. Instead, they're focusing on what they can do to bolster Ukraine without harming relations with Washington. And the silence that we have heard today in response to what Mr. Stubb seemed to suggest, to me, is a proof of that.
Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, said in an interview for BBC, "For Putin, a long war in Iran is a plus. In addition to energy prices, it means the depletion of US reserves and the depletion of air defense manufacturers. So we, Ukraine, have a depletion of resources." So far, the war in Iran is it seems like a major success for Vladimir Putin. What can Russia do to prolong the conflict in Iran?
Well, Russia can continue fighting in Ukraine, but this doesn't seem to be going very well for Russia. Winter is over, and this massive pressure on Ukraine, bombardment of cities and civilian infrastructure, energy, it didn't bring Ukraine to its knees. At the moment, it seems the Ukrainian forces are capable of actually making small territorial gains, counteroffensives here and there. So it's very hard for Russia to make a breakthrough. But obviously, the longer this conflict in Iran lasts, the more difficult it is for the United States to really pay attention to Ukraine, to continue supplying Ukraine. And that's why it's so important to unblock the money for Ukraine and this forthcoming EU summit, and also why it is so important for Europeans to boost their defense industry, which they're doing. I mean, we see unprecedented levels of funding from EU level, from the EU level, from national capitals going into the defense industry. So it seems to me that even though in the short term Ukraine may be suffering from the Iran war, in the longer term, it seems to me that the certain threshold for Europeans was also crossed, and that the Europeans will scale up their defense industry, their armaments production, and that is going to benefit Ukraine as well.
Adam Jasser, news director at TVP World, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World.